we are here today. We are reacting to Wansee Entertainment. I know I thought I was going to do something, but I just don't want to do all. But I just want to do this now because not waiting for the humming, no, because I've been going for the humming. So we're gonna react to it, and I really want to react to this video. I will add some little songs, even though I get it. So the first horror story we're going to react to is Short Horror Story. I think it's like a story, and then cost study. So everyone might a little bit down because energy hear me.
I'm a man who works in the sewers.
Okay.
That day was also in the middle of repairs in the sewer.
Then
Suddenly, I heard something coming out of the water quickly.
Where?
So I turned my head and found something crawling towards me in the dark.
Ooh.
At first, I thought a colleague was messing with me,
No.
but its movement was so bizarre. Its shape slowly revealed in the dark. It was a figure with numerous legs attached to the human body and was crawling creepily on the water. I ran away screaming up the ladder, and he was staring at me from below. I called the police as soon as I went up, and they went down there and searched, but they didn't find the mysterious creature. Rumor has it that there used to be a mad doctor in my town. He was a man who was crazy about bug research, and at some point he started crawling on the floor like a bug, and he's just missing. I thought maybe he was the one I saw in the sewers. But I also knew that no one would believe me if I told this story. I just couldn't resist the curiosity. Eventually, I went back down the sewers. Walking for a long time in the flash, I heard a faint sound somewhere. I had a hunch. I immediately pulled out the electric shocker I had brought, and at last in the dark he showed himself. He crawled towards me with his centipede-like legs. He crawled over, grabbed my leg, and dragged me away at a tremendous speed. I was dragged frantically by him and used an electric shocker on him, and he collapsed screaming. His face was even more hideous when seen up close. It was definitely a human face, but it was full of green skin and black veins. I'd asked him who he was, but he kept struggling to drag me away without an answer. I knocked him completely out with the electric shocker and called the police. Police arrested him and confirmed that he was surprisingly the missing doctor. And shockingly, it was confirmed that several legs that were attached to his body were attached by removing other people's legs.
What?
However, he continued to feel uneasy and did not eat anything. And he did not say anything, no matter how much the police asked. So eventually, the police put him back in the sewer and he crawled to his hiding place. When police followed him to the shelter, many skeletons were found all over. It is also said that all kinds of surgical tools were placed. Eventually, police arrested him again, but he continued to refuse food and died shortly afterwards. It turns out he died from contracting germs from the legs of a rotten corpse. And what happened to him? It is still remembered as a creepy incident, leaving many questions.
So that was the missing person who. So that was the missing person. So the doctor was a missing person. And I know it was a missing person that in months they knew it was him. So let's watch this latest video. Abandoned building horror story. Horror story. I don't know. I think it's about the abandoned building. Let's watch it.
I am a police officer. There was an abandoned building in the mountains of our village, and 4 young men who were on an expedition to the building were recently reported missing. Moreover, I heard from my senior colleague that there had been several more people missing in the building before, but even then, he said no evidence was found. After all, I visited the building to investigate the case. It was an abandoned building that was gloomy, even at a glance. There was a small temple next to it, and I met a monk there. Then I asked the monk about the abandoned building. The monk said that the building was occupied by the devil and told me not to even go near it. I snorted at him because I didn't believe such things, but the monk had a very solemn face, and he said, "Never go inside the building, but if you must go there, remember one thing. If you hear something, you must leave immediately. When the devil opens its mouth, the gates of hell will open as well." I half-heartedly replied okay, and went into the building with enthusiasm. I slowly looked around the inside of the dark building with a flashlight when I suddenly saw two eyes shining brightly in the dark. When I shined the flashlight, I spotted a man crawling like a snake on the floor. Then he looked at me curiously and whispered something. However, I couldn't hear what he was saying. I pointed my gun at him and shouted, asking who he is. But he kept muttering and ran away, and I followed him. Then, suddenly, my vision was surrounded with total darkness, and I heard his voice, which sounded loud. "My master says he is happy that new food has arrived." As soon as I heard that, I got goosebumps all over my body, and at that moment, I heard the monk's voice in my head. "Get out of that building right now! You are now walking through the entrance to hell, following that snake!" However, it was so dark that I couldn't see ahead. At that time, I heard the monk's sutra in my head, and it became bright again. I felt that I was not inside the building, but in a space surrounded by red veins, and heat radiated from all over the place, making me feel like I was in a pit of fire. And there was a big hole in the floor, and the inside of the hole was like the intestine of a big monster. The intestine kept on wiggling, and a number of hands came out of it that started to grab me and pull me. I fought to death, but the strength of the hands pulling me was so strong that I gradually slipped toward the hole. My body continued to be sucked into the hole as if I was riding a slide, and I called the monk at the top of my lungs as I tried my best not to be sucked in. At that moment, I heard the front door slam open, and I heard the monk's voice. The sound of the monk reciting Buddhist sutras resonated very loudly in the building. Then I heard a scream, and all the hands that had been holding me disappeared. Soon after, the scent of lotus petals began to fill the building, and as the heat dissipated, the large hole in the floor began to shrink. I got out of the hole, and the veins in the hole that had surrounded me finally faded away. At the same time, my whole body felt weak, and I eventually passed out on the spot. When I opened my eyes, I found myself lying in a temple, and the monk was reciting Buddhist scriptures next to me. He told me that it was a close call, and told me not to ever do that again. I thanked him for saving my life, and said goodbye. Since then, I never went near the building again, and only then did I realize where the missing people had gone.
Oh wow, that's like a simple idea. But we're gonna watch 4 videos of his, but we just want to watch some of his other videos. So let's watch his other videos, like the hide seek horror story. Let's do this one.
This is what I've experienced when I was 25. I went to Gavin's house with Alexa, my best friend back then, and her boyfriend. Gavin was a guy I just got acquainted with. After we drank and hung out together, Alexa and her boyfriend went into a separate room for their own romance. Then my partner Gavin stared at me and said, "Shall we start our love too?" However, I refused to because I wasn't ready to develop a deep relationship with him yet. Then he suddenly said, "Then let's play hide and seek." I was a bit perplexed at the moment, but I decided to accept it in order to break the awkwardness. I went into my room, then I heard his voice from afar. "The time limit is 20 minutes. If I find you within that time, you'll become mine." I crawled under the bed giggling. After a while, I started to hear something breaking outside. I started having doubts that he was up to something, but decided to just wait. Then I heard his voice from the hallway. "You have to hide well. Otherwise, it's not fun." Then I heard something being smashed, and the sound got closer and closer. It was just a game, but somehow I started to feel more and more anxious. The moment I was thinking about leaving, suddenly a hammer penetrated the door. I almost screamed in surprise, but I kept my mouth shut with my hands. Then he opened the door and entered the room. He was breathing heavily and was carrying a huge hammer. I started to shiver. Is he playing a joke? All kinds of thoughts disturbed my mind. Then, after a while, he slammed the closet with a hammer with all his might. There was a loud roar, and the closet door slammed open. Then he said, "Ah, she's not here? Too bad. If she was hit, I would have been a good shot." I realized what's happening when I saw him swinging the hammer. It wasn't a joke. He was insane. He picked up the hammer again and walked slowly around the room. I sat under the bed watching him move with bated breath. After a while, he stood in front of the bed. I almost stopped breathing. He suddenly took a deep breath and spoke softly. "I can hear your heartbeat from here." Then he removed the mattress from the bed, threw it away, and slammed the frame of the bed with his hammer. The wood crumbled, and the hammer pierced right next to my head. He shouted, staring at me through the gap in the frame. "I missed the mark!" I crawled out, screamed, and ran frantically out of the room. He held back his hammer and followed me. I ran frantically down the hallway and slid down the stairs. He was following closely behind me. Then suddenly, the alarm rang. He stood still abruptly, looking at his watch, and said, "Time is up." He stood there blankly and said, "Let's play one more game, huh? There are so many places to hide in my house." My whole body was shaking, and I said, "I'm sorry, and that I have to go home." And he kept holding on to me, saying, "It's a shame." I left his house, got into my car, started it, and I heard his voice behind me. "Just one more game, please. I really want to have you."
No, just
I
leave.
immediately left the place and called the police. The police arrived at his house and discovered something shocking. At his house, Alexa and her boyfriend were found dead, their bodies squashed flat together.
Wow.
It turned out that Gavin had hammered them down over and over again. But Gavin was not seen in the house, and when the police searched throughout the house, he was hiding inside a closet, then burst out and swung his hammer at the officer. One policeman was seriously injured, and Gavin was shot by the police and died on the spot.
Good. That police saved his life. Wow, that guy saved, that police saved this guy's life. Wow. Saved your own team. You saved your own team. Good. So we're gonna watch like 2 more videos of his right now. So let's watch let's watch let's watch Santa Claus in the Dark True Horror Show. So it's like Santa Claus in the Dark is true horror. Let's watch it. Santa Claus True Horror.
Do you remember visiting Santa around the holidays?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember sitting on his lap and telling him what you wanted for Christmas?
Yeah.
Growing up in the 90s, I remember always getting to see Santa at the mall or at the Santa's Village in San Bernardino. I had made the trip to see Santa every year until I turned 12.
Wow.
At that age, I was feeling like I was getting too old to see Santa, and I didn't want to do it anymore. Out of all the Santas I visited throughout the years, there was one Santa that I could never forget.
What?
And thinking about it today still disturbs me.
What?
I was 4, and I didn't know how much danger I may have been in. This happened in the early 90s. I was traveling in the family station wagon with my mom and my 3 older siblings.
Okay.
We arrived at this big area that had a few big buildings, and there were a lot of people outside. I believe we were going to a homeschooling event for my older siblings. I remember being placed in a group with other kids around my age. My mom and older siblings went off to do other things and left us in the care of some lady. We formed a single line behind this lady, and I remember being near the end of the line. The lady then led us into one of the buildings. Inside, it looked like a school with a hallway and rooms with many doors. As we walked down the hallway, I noticed a room that was pitch black. I don't remember there being a door either. That should have been my first clue, that something was wrong. I heard a noise coming from the room. Sounded like a voice that said, "Psst, hey." At that age, I was curious, and as we established, I didn't know better. I stopped at the doorway and looked back down the hall. I watched the kids disappear into another room. At that point, I should have run to catch up with my group, but I didn't. I continued to enter the dark room until I heard the voice again. I can't remember what the voice said when I entered, but I started getting scared, thinking it was a monster. The voice then said,
"It's okay. Don't be scared. Don't be afraid of me."
The lights then came on, and sitting right there in the middle of the room on a chair was Santa Claus. Santa! I squealed with delight. My sense of danger was completely gone. I went over to him and was happy to see him. I got on his lap and started talking to him. He asked me the usual questions, like with all the other Santas I met. What did I want for Christmas? Was I a good girl that year? What was my name? And how old was I? Of course, I told him. Then I just started talking to him about my life, my parents, my siblings, my house, that sort of thing. It was just me and Santa talking to each other. I'm not sure how long I was with Santa, but it was probably about 10 minutes or so. To me, it felt like hours. Eventually, I felt like I had been there long enough, and I tried to leave. What happened next was more than unexpected, even to a 4-year-old talking to Santa. I gotta go, I said to Santa. I remember trying to get off his lap, but for some reason, he wouldn't let me go. I can't remember the exact words he said to me, but it was something like, "No, I don't want you to go. You can't leave." I tried to get off his lap again, but I felt him holding on to me a little tighter, so I couldn't get off. He was restraining me. I was getting uncomfortable, and I thought Santa was acting weird. That was when I started to panic. I really wanted to get back to my group, to my family, and away from the situation. I struggled like that for what felt like forever, but was probably more like 30 seconds, before Santa finally let me go. I'm not sure what went through his mind, but he probably got scared that I would start to cry or scream, which would draw attention to the room, and he released me. I slid off his lap and darted towards the entryway. I stopped and looked back at Santa, and he was begging me to come back to him in a childlike voice. He was also pretending to cry. My final words to him were, "I gotta go. Bye, Santa." He continued pretending to cry as I left the room. I went back into the hallway and searched for the room my group was in. I didn't waste any time getting back to my group. When I found the room my group was in and entered, I saw the other kids just sitting at the tables coloring and chatting away. I found an empty spot, grabbed the paper and crayons that were on the table, and then colored like the rest of the kids. The lady that was in charge of my group never confronted me about where I'd been or what I was doing. I guess there were so many kids in that room that she didn't notice I was missing for that short period of time. When the time came for us to go back outside and meet up with our parents, we passed by that room again. Only this time, the lights were on and the room was completely empty.
What?
No chair, no Santa.
Wow.
And I was definitely not going
You
to
was
stay
imagining
the room this time.
things.
I'm not sure what my mom or my older siblings did that day, but I didn't bring up my encounter with Santa Claus. For some reason, I just dismissed it and carried on with what I was doing with my group. It was stupid of me not to say anything that day, or when I was traveling home in the car, but I do remember bringing it up at home a few days later. My parents didn't know what the heck I was talking about. They dismissed my story as a dream or a wild imagination.
Wow.
I know I did not make this up, imagine it, or dream it. I didn't bring it up again until a few years later. Again, my parents still didn't know what I was talking about. Then, my mom said something that still disturbs me. She said, if Santa was there that day, I would have been notified about it. The way she said that made so many terrifying things click. Santa was never supposed to be there that day. Even though this happened 25 years ago, these are the details that send chills down my spine to this day. It wasn't December. There were no Christmas decorations. He was in the dark on a day when there were hundreds of kids around.
I knew
I was
something
really happy
off.
to see him. Thinking back on it now, I'll never know who that man was. It's probably for the best that it remains a mystery.
I knew something
When
was
that
off.
memory of my encounter with that Santa crosses my mind, I try not to think about what could have happened to me if I had stayed with him
Oh
a minute longer. I should
yeah.
consider myself lucky that I wasn't abducted that day. That could have been the last day I ever saw my mom and my older siblings. For all you kids out there listening to this story, do not ever encounter anybody that's alone in a room or a public area. It doesn't matter if it's Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, or Chipper the Chipmunk. They are still strangers. If they're alone and call for you to come over, run away. Don't take the chance.
Yeah.
It's not worth it.
Yeah. What would happen if you did? Yeah, cause Because I know the place and the corridor was off. Because I knew it was off for some reason. Because it wasn't off. It wasn't really that off. It was off because I know it wasn't no Christmas lights or anything. Christmas lights, Christmas lights, like Christmas lights, and Christmas tree. It's never been there. No songs or anything. But I know there's something wrong with it. But I know everything was wrong with it anyway, so that's why I know everything about it, because I know everything was wrong. Because I know everything was wrong with it. Because I know everything was wrong with it, because I know everything. So this one, our last one, our last one we're going to watch is True Fantasy Horror Story Anime. So let's watch it anyway. The last one.
In a world where dry eye symptoms keep coming back. Inflammation in the
True Fantasy Horror Story.
My name is Sam, and this is a true story. In fact, it's a cautionary tale, so please pay attention.
Alright.
This story takes place when I was in 5th or 6th grade.
Okay.
I'm 23 now.
Alright.
One night, when we were heading home, my dad decided to stop at the pharmacy to buy some things.
Okay.
I decided to stay in the car that was parked right in front of the pharmacy,
Alright.
and even though my dad insisted that I go with him, I stubbornly refused.
Mm.
Of course, he didn't like the idea of leaving me alone in the car, but he decided to just head in without me. The pharmacy was located on a busy street, and a lot of people and cars were passing.
Wow.
I remember there being a narrow, dark alley on the left side of the pharmacy that looked very creepy, that likely led to the backside of the street, but I didn't pay much attention to that alley at first. I was only in the car for a few minutes when, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a guy coming out of the alley. He was a bit tanned. He was wearing a dirty white shirt and jeans and looked as if he was in his late 20s or early 30s. I remember being creeped out by him, especially since he came out of the alley looking around kind of frantically. He looked suspicious. That's when we made eye contact, and he started slowly walking straight to me. The thing about his walk is that it wasn't normal. He had a bent back, and his hands were in his pockets. As he walked, he would look at the pharmacy and back to the car, over and over again. The whole time his eyes would come back to mine. He was staring at me. I quickly looked away, trying to keep his figure in my peripheral vision. Once he got to the car, he tried to open the door, but thankfully it was locked.
He's trying to get you.
I was so scared the whole time, but I didn't want to make things worse, so I just pretended like nothing was happening. He kept trying to open the door. I didn't actually have a phone at the time, so I reached into my pocket and then turned my body away from him, making a motion like I had just pulled a phone out of my pocket and put it to my ear. I was convinced he was trying to kidnap me. I glanced over my shoulder to see how he was acting as he continued to try to get in the car. He had a concerned look on his face, but kept looking back at the pharmacy. After what felt like forever, he gave up and walked back to the dark alley. His walk was so creepy as he went. After he was no longer in view, I quickly got out of the car and went into the pharmacy to look for my dad. Once I found him, I told him everything. He was so shocked and angry. He even insisted on searching for the guy, but I didn't tell him that the creepy guy came out of the dark alley. I didn't want something to happen to my dad. To this day, I haven't forgotten his creepy stare and walk. God knows what he wanted to do to me. What if my dad didn't lock the doors?
Yeah.
And what if this guy hadn't given up? I'm still paranoid to this day and would never stay in the car waiting for someone.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so thankful to God for protecting me and for my dad's concern that led him to lock the door. Please, never ever stay alone in a car, especially at night. And if you must, lock the door.
Yeah. Yeah. What would happen if the dad did not lock the car door when his daughter is in the car? They should not leave your child in the car, because do not do that. Because one might have a suspicion for that one. The one that has suspicion for, like, don't leave your child in your car. That's what it is. If he did not lock the lock it in time, she would be kidnapped or be kidnapped, and her dad will not see her again. That's a scary story, though. Yeah, I love Wansee though. Yeah, I love Wansee. I love Wansee. Yeah, subscribe to him because he makes like best horror stories. So if you want to subscribe to him, just subscribe to him because he got great horror stories too. Maybe want to chill with you and listen to. But if you want me to do like share my story, but we're going to do share my story on I think on Tuesday because I just wanted to do something for my life. So I'm going to end it right here. Join the K-Squad. Love ya. Bye bye.